here at the last game of the season for the San Jose Earthquakes against the Seattle Sounders. They get a 2-2 draw on the road. I'm Phillip Leyva here with Jamon Moore. Jamon, who is at the stadium, give us a bit of clue us in to what things are like there at the stadium for you right now, and how is the match from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, very exciting up and down game today. You can hear the ECS still behind us, still going strong, finishing out the season. It was a great atmosphere, still at Lumen Field. The very first game in the Sounders' history that they weren't playing in a game that meant something for the MLS Cup playoffs. They had never experienced this before. And coming in, it was a very weird vibe. As you talk to people around the club, I got to talk to many people from the broadcast staff before the game, and a couple of the front office people. Even met one of the owners and talked to him for a little bit. Very interesting, but they've never experienced this before. And it kind of felt that, it was a game to try stuff for both teams. And Nico Teixeira's looked great again today. A lot of fun. Goal from Cade Cowell. And a goal from Jeremy Abobasi, the 17th on the season. And, a couple from Nico Ladero, something he hadn't been doing this season, scoring goals. And, it ended up being fun. I think we're going to get going on the press conference here fairly soon today, just to give everyone a heads up. I think we are getting the sign that they want to get going. So they got a flight to catch, and we're going to get into it pretty quickly now.
All right, excellent. Well, as we move into the press conference, Jamon, right before we get there, let's talk about this first goal for Nico Ladero, because he opens up the match in the first minute. I mean, he works his way. The Sounders work their way. Oh, here we go.
Here.
We'll come back to it.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today following today's 2-2 road draw against Seattle Sounders FC. We're now here with interim head coach Alex Covelo. So it's speaking with a question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Coach. It's Jamon here. Sorry for the loud noise. I'm here at the stadium, and they're still chanting outside. Exciting game, up and down. Goals early. Maybe not exactly the way that you would want to plan it for an away game, but the team came to fight today. We got good performances again out of Nico Teixeira and also from a lot of your midfield. How did you feel that the game went overall?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's an up and down game. I think that we were sleeping and they scored in the first minute. Then we did our job and we were able to score quick. It would be difficult. But apart of that, maybe they had a little bit more possession, but I think that we could compete very well. I think that also we had some situations where we could score also another goal, same as them. So it was an even game. Seattle here, where it's very difficult, champion of the CONCACAF. I think we handled very well.
Next question from Marco Yueill.
Hey, Alex, congratulations on this time, the way this team was able to come back. Can you just talk about the resiliency, that this team has had throughout the season, especially in today's game when, obviously it's the last game. It doesn't mean much for you guys as far as any for playoffs, but still for them to come back and show that they tied against a great team like Seattle. What does this mean to you at this last game for you? Thank you.
What has been during the 20 and something games that I have been here. I think with the exception of 2-3 games that we can have it, we didn't have the luck. And I think in summer we were closer to the playoffs, and everybody knows what happened. I'm very proud of the guys. The same way that hopefully they are proud of this staff for the job that we have done.
Yeah, let's jump now to Alex Moore. We'll try to come back to you. Jamon or Marco, not sure if you guys have a second question.
Unmuted.
Hey, Coach, getting a 17-goal season from Jeremy Abobasi this season, that felt like an output that if this team had said you're going to get 17 goals from him at the beginning of the season, this team would have been in the playoffs. as the outgoing interim coach here, looking ahead to next season, if you looking at this offseason, if you were in charge, what focus would you put into this team in order to make sure that it gets across the playoff line next year? What is the places that you would love to invest on further if you had more time to do so?
Well, I think that question is for
Muted.
Lucy Gonzalez. I think that all of you can see where we need help and when. I think that the fact that Jeremy has scored 17 goals is not because all of them he has been created by his own. I think that the way that the team has been played, helped him. And in relation with winning what we needed, I told you, first 7 more games. Second one, what happens in the summer. And the third one, in certain moments, defend a little bit better, but that's it.
Thank you, Alex. Marco, I'm not sure if you have a second question.
Yes, I do. Alex, this is your final game as a coach for this team. Just can you talk about some of your emotions going on right now with you? I'm sure you wanted to go out with the win, but I think, again, a tie is a good consolation prize, but just talk about what this final game for your coaching career for this team meant to you today.
Well, I talked about my emotions. I didn't talk in the past. I'm not going to talk now. So, in relation with other things, I think that these guys, this locker room is very unique, and they are very unified, and they are enjoying the way that we're playing. And at the same time, I cannot be more proud of the staff that we are working here every day downstairs, every day with the players, like from the medical part and also with Wondo, Lucho, Steve. They have a lot of value, not only professional but also as a human beings, which is very important. But I'm not going to talk more about emotions. I think everybody has eyes.
No worries. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate everything you did for us this interview.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and swap over to the Spanish portion and take a couple questions from Carlos.
Profe, buenas tardes.
Hola, Carlos.
Digo, lo acaba de mencionar un poco. Yo primero que le gustaría decirle a los fanáticos de los Quakes que lo siguieron esta temporada que también lo apoyaron, ¿no? en este interinato. Y lo segundo es, ¿qué le gustaría a usted hacer en la pretemporada, ahora en el off-season? ¿Cuál es el futuro de Alex Covelo? ¿Dónde se ve usted yendo en su carrera?
No, en cuanto a mi futuro, no tengo ni idea de mi futuro. Yo ya lo dije antes, cuando empezamos el primer partido, además contra Seattle, que iba a hacer todo lo que pudiera para ayudar a este club que me ha dado tanto, y que hay tantas personas que tienen tanto valor. Ya lo dije. Ahora, Luchi tiene que hacer un análisis junto con el club y decidir cuáles son los siguientes pasos para San José. Y lógicamente no voy a hablar de la off-season, porque es que eso es una pregunta para Luchi. Creo que es un equipo que con un poco de ayuda puede tener mucho potencial, con un poco de ayuda.
Y a los fanáticos que lo siguen la temporada.
Espectacular. No, es que la gente que espera fuera en el campo para acabar el partido y te anima y te anima para el siguiente partido es enorme. No. Y ellos quieren ganar, yo lo entiendo, y solo decirles que hemos dado todo lo que podíamos. Y que es una pena, porque me hubiese encantado poder llevar este equipo a los playoffs. Aparte del futuro como entrenador, porque José lo merece, porque quiero mucho este club, aparte de las cosas.
Gracias, profe. Bueno, nos estamos hablando.
Gracias.
All right, thank you, Alex, and thank you everyone for your questions. We'll be bringing out a player shortly.
All right, Jamon, before we went over to the press conference, I was going to talk a bit about this first goal that opened the match. This was from Nico Lodero. We had the ball that was run in. The Roldan brothers send it down to the end line. Alex Roldan crosses it back, and Rodriguez heads it right to the top of the box, which allows Leyva to get a strike on goal, which actually I wouldn't say necessarily set the tone for this match. I know early on I was looking in the Slack chat and folks were saying that perhaps defense was optional, that this was going to be a back and forth match. I know that you saw that too. But I was noticing something different here that we haven't seen a lot throughout the season. And the Quakes kind of sat back and allowed Seattle to possess the ball more often than they do against other opponents that we've seen throughout the season. So I wanted to get your take on this, Jamon. And how did this change the approach tactically for the Earthquakes, for Alex Covelo in this match? And how did things look different to you in this match against the Sounders? And what you referenced before wasn't necessarily a match that had any sort of value in terms of, going to the playoffs or winning the trophy. This was just sort of an exhibition match between two teams who were just finishing up their seasons.
Yeah, obviously, it didn't change a lot that quickly. A lot of times goals can happen fast in games for a variety of reasons, some of which our teams are just getting into the game, some of which are that goals are going to happen at various times, and it just so happens that sometimes it's going to happen quicker. In this particular case, you see so often with games when there's a goal in the first minute that team doesn't end up like boat racing the other team and winning 5-6 to nothing. A lot of times it's a good little wake-up call, and the other team gets into the match a lot more quickly, and they solidify things a little bit more defensively, and that's what the Quakes did. They decided, hey, we're gonna push and get our own goal, and they absolutely did, and they did so through kind of also the same level of precision by which the Sounders scored their first goal, and then both teams kind of like, okay, it's on. And so, both sides, did tighten things up. I mean, Covelo said that he wouldn't call the game up and down. But, I felt, watching it from the press box that, there's a lot of, kicking balls forward, a lot of transitions, a lot of, players desperately, trying to get back, in those transitions. The Quakes always look disorganized in their transitions, and it's something that I've noticed the entire season, and maybe I'm a bit more attuned to it than other teams, but they're dropping back, and a lot of times it's emergency defending in order to kind of bail out what looks like an otherwise simple cross. So it makes the game look more frantic maybe than it otherwise should be. I think from his perspective, like the quality of chances that they gave up after that in the first half was a lot lower.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good. Again, both teams kind of had to go through their own little wake-up call and settled in. And the second half became, a little bit more cagey, a little bit less about the transitions, a little bit more about trying to see how they could create, off of set pieces and off of, half space attacking or half field attacking. And, that's what we saw more in the second half. And, the goals that came resulted from that. You got the set piece goal from the Sounders. And you also had Cade's goal that pretty much came out of nothing other than Cade just deciding to cut in and take a shot. Right. And usually you're like, why did you take that shot? Because the chance of those being scored is usually pretty low when that happens. But, really good placement from Cade. And, that kind of like bouncing ball that kind of like bounces right in front of the goalkeeper is extremely dangerous. Mm-hmm. And he's had more than one of those before. It's a regular shot that Cade has added to his repertoire. In fact, his very first goal in LA was very similar type of shot. It's one that he feels very comfortable with, cutting in and shooting that way. He scored goals in preseason that way. So, for him, it's not an ill-advised shot. It's one that he should be taking.
Absolutely.
And, it was a good finish by him. And, if you take the first minute out of the game, if you're Alex Covelo, you're going like, hey, we outscored him 2-1 after that first minute. Mm-hmm. And he has every right to look at the game that way.
Absolutely. There's something I wanted to talk to you about here, Jamon, in regards to how Cade Cowell could be deployed for this team moving forward. There are a lot of questions surrounding him. He seems to be a player that our viewers on YouTube tend to bring up quite a bit because, he's such a young guy. He is still a few years behind Benji Kikanovic, who is oftentimes he was compared to. Daniel Slayton made a case for Cade Cowell perhaps to be deployed in a different position for the team. One thing that she brought up during the broadcast that I found kind of interesting was she was saying, why not try out the Quakes in a 4-4-2? Of course, this would be a huge shift from how they've been playing the past few seasons, as they've been a lot more possession-oriented. I think this would set them up a little bit more to play on the counterattack. But there are some benefits to that as well. I mean, for one, Cade Cowell would have an opportunity once again to play off the shoulder of the defenders, which, as we've seen flashes throughout his short career, and we saw a little bit tonight. He is capable of beating defenders, and he can score goals, but it's a matter of consistency, right? Like, how clinical can Cade Cowell actually be? If we do have a two-striker formation set up, though, it would be interesting to see, because we know that Jeremy Abobasi is more than capable of playing that 9 position and playing hold-up and playing off of a guy like Cade Cowell. I mean, we've already seen it with Jamon Montero. They've combined quite a bit already, but it would be interesting to see if what Danielle presented during the broadcast would be a possibility. So there's another thing that should be taken into consideration, though, with this sort of like change, is how would this look for Luchi Gonzalez coming into the team next season? I think that's the big question here. So I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts are about this, Jamon, whether a different tactical approach in terms of formation shift is possible, if this is something that we've seen from Luchi Gonzalez. I know with FC Dallas, he had both Ricardo Pepi and Jesus Ferreira at different times there. He had some really great strikers to work off of. He has a really great option here with Jeremy Abobasi. Is Cade Cowell perhaps an option in that sort of a system, or will we continue to see him fight for a position on the left wing against Benji Kikanovic, essentially, and especially if we're going to have Christian Espinoza out there on the right wing?
It's a fantastic question. A lot of it depends on, are these rumors that swirl around Benji Kikanovic and Cade Cowell, both of them, now getting the potential to move to Europe? Benji being sought
Hey,
after.
everyone. We're going to be bringing midfielder Jackson Yueill momentarily. So give us a couple more minutes. Jackson Yueill will be joining us.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
we'll get Jackson here in a minute. So both of those players have been mentioned in multiple trade situations. Benji more so with Almeida's new team, AEK Athens over there. And so, I think the Quakes wanted a bit more money than was on offer there. But we know, Benji would love to get to Europe, particularly around Bosnia, so he can be closer to the Bosnian national team and have an opportunity potentially to play for them in the future. It's a goal of his. And, and Cade Cowell, these, rumors have picked back up again about interest in Cade Cowell coming from Europe as well. So who knows if either of them will be here next season at this rate. It's possible one or both of them, could make a move to Europe. You could also see teams around the league being quite interested in a player like Benji Kikanovic as well. I think we're going to see some changes. That change can come in a number of different places on this team, but they've got the ability to be able to go out there and get another designated player. The question is, where do they do it? Mm-hmm. Are they going to do it at the 6, which is what we've talked about on this show? But you could see them potentially using that on a winger, on a left winger. And that wouldn't necessarily be a bad use of it, so long as you get a serviceable TAM level player at a 6 that you feel very comfortable with. It's not about like how much you pay, it's about what you're getting for that value. And now that we're hearing that Luchi and John Fisher are talking about that there's going to be some increased investment, it's a fair question as to where should that investment go. And that, I think, will come along with Luchi's ideas of where he sees different players fitting, or in some cases not fitting into this team going forward. We don't know what he thinks of Benji. We don't know what he thinks of Cade. We don't know what he thinks of players like Jackson Yueill, who today, again, was at a 6. Kind of a little bit of a square peg round hole situation continuing here with Jackson. Not really clear like what his best fit is in this team, and if he really is long for this team at this point, or if he potentially could be the subject of an interleague trade at some point, like we heard with Charlotte. Yeah. So, all kinds of things can happen this offseason. We just don't really know what Luchi's ideas are, at this point. I got a chance very quickly to catch Chris Leach at halftime today. He's very excited about what he sees with Nico Chikaris. I resisted the urge to ask him why we didn't see him earlier in the season, but I'm sure a lot of that was he needed the reps, he needed the time in practice, he needed to get more comfortable with the MLS pace of play. Defensively, he still has some liabilities to work out, but some really exciting stuff from him today. If you're Lucci, you've got to be looking at a guy like Nico Chikaris and going like, well, that's my Paxton Pomykal, right? That's the type of player that I'm looking to be able to get more on. Does he see a guy like Benji Kikanovic as a forward, as a striker, maybe a second one, or as an alternative to Jeremy Ebobisse? Can we see Jeremy Ebobisse be healthy for an entire season again 2 years in a row? Something that he hasn't really put together in his career. So I could see things changing quite a bit, and all for reasons that we can't really put together right now because we don't really quite know exactly what Lucci's plan is. We know at FC Dallas he played a 4-3-3. You could say it's a little bit more of a 4-2-3-1, a little bit more the double pivot style. Covelo's been rolling out more of a 4-1-4-1. That also can fit into kind of a 4-3-3 type look. But then you're going to have that really strong six. So Judson, Remedi, question marks, Jackson Yueill, question mark. Like the question marks around this kind of the back part of this central midfield for me are very, very big.
Yeah, and that's actually, you answered the question that I was going to ask you about Nico Chikaris. I'm still wondering, though, what kind of a role he's going to have if he should be getting starting minutes next season, considering whether or not, the Quakes are going to have another six that they can rely on in the position in front of the back four. So considering the back four in this match, I mean, we saw the vulnerability right off the bat. And we did see them settle in a little bit, but there were some pretty nervy moments throughout the match. Even on the corner kick when Nico Lodeiro scored, it kind of seemed like there could have been a little bit more pressure coming from, any of the defenders or any person who was defending on the set piece in that case. But there were some nervy moments. They did end up holding it together so they could get the draw. But looking at this back four, Jamon, we did see Tanner Beeson get some minutes at the end of the match. We saw, Trauco get quite a number of minutes in the beginning of the match. I mean, what for you was something that was a positive for the team in this match defensively, considering aside from the goals that were given up, will we be seeing more of Tanner Beeson next season getting substantive minutes, or is he going to be kind of relegated to the bench and coming in as perhaps a substitute left back as we saw in this match? And will we be seeing more of Trauco and Rodriguez and hopefully Carlos Acapo when we see him as well? And of course Nathan, who has been one of the more stellar defenders of this team.
Yeah, I think there's, other than the players coming in, I think there's a lot of question marks. I believe Paul Marie's contract was just a 1-year deal with an option. So, they have a decision to make on Paul Marie again. And now that you've got Trauco and Acapo and, coming in, they have a decision to make on Tommy Thompson. I believe his contract is up. I think they still have an option on him as well. They've been thin on the outside, and our Acapo, who we haven't really gotten to see at all, and Trauco going to be the two players they are going to ride with at the start of next season. We don't know. And, I think a lot of it depends on, what moves they will make in the off season in terms of those additional players and what moves that they might be able to make either intra-league. For me, outside back is an intra-league type move, particularly when it comes to the depth there. I don't think you want to keep going outside the league to be able to get players of that type. It's not a position of high value. You have to have them, and if you don't have good ones, certainly it's a liability.
For sure.
But is when you already have a bit of an investment there with two new players coming in, that their decision has to be made as to, do you want to pay, more veteran type money, or is this a place where you go into the super draft and you find a star coming out of college? One of the players I've been watching up here is the right back for Washington University, number 1 in the country. He looks to me like he might be a MLS level player that could go in the draft at an outside back position. Do you look for someone high athletic, defensive minded, but also is athletic enough to get into the attack? Player out of Quakes too. I think that's a good call by Crystal Quadra Cutler here. there's a lot of options that they could go with that feel like the quality level of it wouldn't necessarily be significantly different than what you're getting out of a Paul Marie and out of a Tommy Thompson. Right. And you could, find some roster cap space improvement, out of that position if you play your cards right. So, we can see. We'll see how it goes.
That would be I think that would be very difficult to fill. Like, considering the talent that the Quakes already have. I mean, Tommy Thompson, I'm already seeing in the chat right now, a lot of folks think that he might not be returning for the season. I happen to think that Paul Marie is a pretty fine player who has a lot of great skills. I think he comes, he adds a lot to the team off the bench. He's more than serviceable. But I think with, if Akabo comes in and adjusts well, I think he and Troko can make a really nice pairing on the two fullback positions. But I think for me, another big question is the center backs. Like, that remains, because I think a lot of people assume that once Rodriguez stepped in that was going to be a huge upgrade, but I'm not convinced that is an enormous upgrade from Tanner Beeson at this point, especially pairing with Nathan. I think we saw some really great moments from Tanner Beeson earlier in the season, right? The big standout, as we mentioned multiple times on the show, was the game against Sporting Kansas City earlier on. Beeson has shown that he can be a very dominant force on the back line, but can he do it consistently is the big question. So if we look at Beeson's profile really quickly, I mean, this is a guy that is still 25 years old, right? He's not even close to, he's years from his prime years in the center back position. So for those of you who may not quite follow how players improve over time in positions that are typically played defensively, actually goalkeeping is included, players tend to kind of find their best years as they get into their late 20s and sometimes even into their early 30s. And Beeson's not quite there yet. And I think we've kind of seen from Beeson, make a lot of those mistakes that you see from younger players as they are adjusting to the team, as they're adjusting to the league, which I think is also really important. So I think having Beeson as a mainstay and possibly even fighting for a starting role against Rodriguez is going to be very important going into next season. I don't think we should automatically assume that Rodriguez is going to be that starter next to Nathan. I will say, though, to me, Jamon, Nathan is a lock-in starter for this team. But I'm curious about your thoughts there. Can Tanner Beeson be a starter for this team, or should the Quakes perhaps even go out for another option, considering that Rodriguez really hasn't shown to be that effective? Perhaps I could give him a little grace, considering I just did the same for Beeson. But, I mean, this is a guy who is already a little more established. He has played, 5 or 6 games for the team, and he hasn't necessarily been that impressive thus far. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, these are really good questions. And, at the beginning of the year, if you had, again, we were all, I think everyone on this show that talked about it, we all wanted to see the possibility of Nathan and Beeson starting together on the back line in Almeida's typical 4-2, 1-3. And the question for me was, had we started the season that way, would the Quakes have gotten off to as bad of a start as they did? How much of the season got off to a bad start because of playing 3 in the back with Jackson Yueill as a center back and tinkering, too much with Almeida's more tried and true system? I think, he might have stuck around longer, maybe even lasted the season had they had success with that. We never got to see that because Francisco Calvo, ended up getting the starting nod and Jackson Yueill at center back. And I want to bring in a guest for the first time on the Aftershock here. Really excited to have him. We're going to try to make some room in here. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go yet.
We'll make it work.
But everyone say hi to Ted Ramey
Ted.
As we bring him on to the show. And we are just in time.
All right, thank you
to
everyone
talk
for your
with,
patience.
Jackson
We're now
Yueill.
here with midfielder Jackson Yueill. So let's begin with a question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Jackson. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us. 2-2 draw in Seattle's, something that a lot of teams would love to get. Obviously, giving up a first-minute goal is tough, but you guys battled back. You got two goals the rest of the way, and were able to get out with a draw and win the season series against the Sounders. How do you feel about that as an end for the season? Given the fact that this team, was going to miss the playoffs regardless of today's outcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it shows what
Muted.
we've kind of been doing a lot through this year is, this is a resilient team. I think, we battle until the end, and there's a lot of character and a lot of passion in the locker room, and the guys have been fantastic the whole year. Like you said, it's a hard place to play, and even though they're not in playoffs, they're a really, really, really good team. And to play there how we did and suffer in times and make them suffer, it was a positive end to the season, and I'm proud of the guys' work today.
Thank you. Next to Marco College.
Hey, Jackson, thanks for taking time to talk to us today. With the season over, can you just talk about, what it was like being coached by Covelo this season after the rough start with the exit of Almeida? And I know that was some drama, but the fact that, it seemed like he was able to stabilize his team throughout the rest of the season, and just can you talk about how he was approached to the players the rest of the season?
Yeah, really, I've been fortunate to have good coaches in the past, and I've kind of worked with all these guys, at different points in my life and in my career, whether on the field or in college or here, and they're a fantastic group. Since the first day they gave everything. They were they showed up for us every day. They came with try to help us integrate into how they wanted to play the game, how they wanted to defend, how they wanted to attack, and you could see the passion and excitement and the willingness that they wanted, and that brought a lot to the group. I think the guys responded well to them, and Alex has got such a great demeanor, and Luciano has a great demeanor of trying to help the guys. Unfortunately, weren't helped out a lot throughout the year, and struggled a little bit in a couple of unlucky bounces, which kind of kept us off of playoffs. But really happy that we were able to work with them, and in the future I think they're gonna do really good things somewhere.
Thanks, Jackson. Let's go ahead and take a second question from Jamon Moore.
Unmuted.
Hi, Jackson. One more. You've been asked to do a lot of different things this season, play a lot of different positions. The last two games as a lone six, which is not really something you've done much of, for this team in the past either. Obviously there's been a lot of different asks on you throughout this season. When you look back on it, as you get a chance to reflect, what is it you think you'll take the most from this season in terms of your particular performances, areas that you think you want to work on ahead of Lucci coming in next year, maybe with a look toward any conversations you've had with Lucci in terms of his expectations on you? Thank you.
Muted.
Yeah, I think, when called upon, everyone has to be able to play in whatever role that the coach needs them during that period of the game or that stretch of games. And definitely challenging to play a lot of different roles, especially at the beginning of the year. And then kind of when Alex and Luciano came, it was a little bit more organized in that 8 role, and then the last few games were a lone 6. But I feel comfortable in all those positions because there's great players around me, and the coaching staff puts together a good game plan. And so when you're in any of those areas, you know what you're doing. I think things to improve on are being able to break lines through dribbling a little bit more, trying to advance attack a little bit quicker. I think it's something that we can improve on. And then the final balls and the finishing as a collective. I think Jeremy had a great year, and I think if certain games and certain moments we're able to put the game away, I think we're sitting in a playoff spot. But it is what it is, and that's soccer and that's sports in general. You miss some chances and don't take opportunities, and it happens. But really proud of this team, and was happy to play in any position that the coach needed me and that the team needed me. And that goes for everyone in this group. Everyone was willing to accept a new position and a new role, and try to do what's best to help the team win, and that's what I'm most proud of this year.
Thank you. And let's close with the final question from Marco Yueill. Go ahead, Marco.
Hey, Jackson, thanks for taking one more question here. You guys finished with 3 points to end the season. And do you feel that this could be a stepping stone going into 2023, knowing that there's going to be a clean slate with pretty much everyone with Lucci coming in and taking over next year? And one also thing I want to ask is just how were you able to, have the arms band captain this year, and just how were you able to lead the team, and what experiences you learned just through the season through all the trials and tribulations? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with that. I think there are a lot of good leaders on this group. There's a lot of guys who have won before and guys who have experience, and of course there's a lot of young guys who are hungry and motivated and talented. And so the leadership part comes from the accountability that we have in the locker room for each and every one of us. And so that was really, really fun to, we created a pretty unique culture. And, I think the guys are all the leaders. They step up every game, every training. They're there to put in the work and to, bring the right attitude. And so, being the captain of this team, it's been a pleasure. I take a lot of pride in it, but it's a collective effort, and everyone pulls their own weight and tries to help push the team further. And next year, we'll see. New coach who was announced a while ago, who isn't here, and there's a lot of open things to do. So it comes down to the higher ups in the organization to do the right moves. And you see all these teams making plays for big time players and developing rosters that are solid and have a lot of experience and a lot of young talent. And so we'll see how it goes forward. But from this year, I'm really proud to play alongside these guys. And I think whatever happens is we'll cherish a lot of the memories that happened this year.
You got one earlier here.
Thanks, Jackson, and good luck next season.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, everyone. And on behalf of the Quakes Communications Department, thank you for everything this season.
Unmuted.
All right, well, there we go. Happy to be joined by Ted Ramey. Ted is the host of the Soccer Hour on KMBR, and he does the play-by-play on the radio alongside Joe Cannon. Ted, welcome to the Aftershock.
Can you tell us where, Phil? Right?
What's up?
The ball guys with the beard.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are a little dark. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two of you right now from my perspective.
Darkness in our souls, Phil.
Ted, really great to have you on. You've been covering the matches all season. What stood out for you in this match? This is a game where there were no playoff implications, and yet it's still a rivalry match. The Heritage Cup was on the line. Tell us your thoughts.
I thought that it was interesting that both the teams kind of went out there in the first 35 minutes and wanted to see who was going to kind of break first. The Sounders struck 30 seconds into the match, and then 3 minutes later, the Earthquakes got right back into it. But it was end-to-end, nonstop, just wide open until about the 35th minute, when I think that, even the guys who are probably about as fit as any athletes in the world finally realized, hey, we can't do this for another 55 minutes. We got to kind of chill things down. But I liked the idea that both teams wanted to put it all on the line and just kind of leave it all on the field. As cliche as that is, it's nice to see that kind of effort in a game that doesn't have grander meaning. We looked at some of the individual performances. I liked what we saw from Nico Chakiris. I think that, that goal that was eventually scored to tie it at 1 by Jeremy Abobasi was set up by a beautiful pass from Nico Chakiris to set up Christian Espinosa, who ripped a shot from the outside. Big, juicy rebound off the stop, set up Jeremy Abobasi. And that was, very, very nice to see. Nico at 17 years old, I think he's got great vision. I think he's got great heads-up play. I love that he's receiving the ball with his heads up and looking to dribble away from pressure, and I thought we saw that a bunch today. I thought that this was just kind of a gutty performance from the Earthquakes, where conceding a goal that early, it could have been a wash. We've seen the Sounders steamroll the Earthquakes before. We've seen them steamroll a lot of teams, but the Earthquakes got themselves back into it quickly and put up a good battle, and then you get another goal in the second half, Nico Ladera again, and suddenly you're down 2-1. Cade Cowell comes on as a substitution, immediately makes an impact on the match. And Cade Cowell, to me, even though he did not match his numbers of 1 year ago, this year, I thought that in the last 8, 10, 12 games, he's been playing with a lot more maturity. And I think that he's overall improving. And I hope that's something that we continue to see under Luchi Gonzalez. So, there were some positive takeaways today, and, it was an entertaining match. And I think that was the concern going into it, is like, neither of these teams have much on the line. Are they going to play a relatively unlively affair? And no, it was really fun. It was end to end. It was, full of good shots and highlights and some hard fouls. And, I appreciate that from both these teams, because they could have just kind of both parked the bus and had, looked for opportunities, as opposed to both teams forcing the issue over the course of 90 minutes. I was a little bit bummed that we only got 1 minute of stoppage time. I thought that was
very strange.
But
the whole game.
Yeah, the whole game. There wasn't anything at the end of the first half, and then at the end it was just boom, over. So, yeah, I mean, that was a little bit disappointing, but no, entertaining game. So that I walk away happy. My whole thing is that even if the Quakes don't win, it at least should be entertaining. And I thought this was an entertaining game and a good way to go out on the season. You don't walk away with a loss. You got a Shea's moment in the sun a week ago, and then you have, Jeremy Abobasi doing his thing, and you get Cade Cowell showing everyone why there is so much hype about him, and you walk off and you start thinking about the offseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, you kind of answered all the questions I had in regards to what the fans have been wanting to hear from us and from you, and that is in regards mostly to Cade Cowell and Nico Chikaris, and you kind of hit the points there with those guys and some of the optimism that the fans have going into next season. Ted, Jamon, this is the part of the show where we kind of close things out and we give our final thoughts. For those of you who are watching and listening right now, just know that we will be back with a post-season episode of the Aftershock as well. So we will be covering a lot of these points. We'll be talking about which players deserve the defensive and offensive and MVP awards and all of those wonderful things that we like to kind of recognize at the end of the season. So Jamon, I'm going to kick it over to you first as we head out here for the show, as we get near the end, and considering this match and now that we're at the end of the season, what are your final thoughts?
Well, first off, we need some lighting in here so you can see our faces. And then Ted and I both need microphones, so this will, look like a real television setup with a stadium in the background, and then all my dreams come true, right? It's the game itself was, good. It was exciting. I liked, to Ted's point, I think like both teams really kind of put out there what they were about. They wanted to show a lot more on the attacking side than the defensive side, and left themselves exposed, to transitions and things. But that's part of what made the game a bit fun. I think coming into next season, the two areas that the Quakes really have to work on is going to be transition defense and still on the set piece defense side. Those are two things that if they can improve on both of those, the number of goals they give up, should go down, and we should be able to see, some better results for the Earthquakes next year. Hopefully a push toward the playoffs. But, with players like Nico Chikaris, Cade Cowell, Benji Kanovich, all you can see the steps, Cade's a little bit less so, but you can see steps forward. And then, you've got Jeremy Abobasi scoring 17 goals. And if you had said at the end of the season, Jeremy Abobasi is going to score 17 goals, you would have been like the Quakes should be in the playoffs. And with a better defense, right, they probably should have been. But, again, Jeremy Abobasi finding the right place to be in the right moments, throughout the season, players who can give him service, Jamiro Montero, the ability of ground that he can cover, and the amount of just pure usage that he can eat up in terms of playing through him and such. Teams had to worry about him in the center of the pitch. Imagine a whole season of worrying about him plus Nico Chikaris. That's really exciting. This team gets, as everyone I think has been saying in the comments, this team gets a real good 6 to help handle some of that transition defense, and another somebody to help out on the set piece defensive side. Ted, I got to think this is a playoff team, borderline, but a playoff team next season, at least competing for a playoff spot on decision day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. And, Luchi Gonzalez at his introductory press conference said that he hoped at the end of his tenure that we were talking about supporter shields and MLS Cup championships and that kind of stuff. He didn't have to say that because those are lofty expectations, but that's what he went out and said. So, the good thing about where the Earthquakes are right now is that I feel like it's relatively easy to identify where the problem areas are. You need to improve the defense first and foremost. You need more just solidification along that back line. And to Jamon's point, talking about just having somebody in there who's going to help on set pieces and make sure that you're not vulnerable to the air attack. These are things that greater minds than mine are going to be able to put in action a lot more so than just my ability to look and see a problem that's consistent and say, okay, that needs to be fixed. Chris Leach, with his acquisitions of guys like Jeremy Abobasi, Jamiro Montero, Jan Gregush, Francisco Calvo, these were guys that he brought in who did contribute this year. So I think we look at them more in the sense of the attack, because Calvo was distribution. He's not a classic defender. Defender is a center back. I think that's pretty clear. But his role was, replacing Osvaldo Alanis. But at the same time, now that Chris Leach and Luchi Gonzalez know what the issues are, I think that their two minds working together, with both of them having great experience in Major League Soccer, I think they're going to be able to rectify those issues and have the Earthquakes in a much better place. And I think that when you go back to the start that you had this year, where you don't get a win in the first 7 games, I think that was part of the reason why the Earthquakes had such a hard time finding momentum. It's not just that they were, working with a new coach and trying to make up for the bad start, but it's just like, it's a big hole to dig out of. And even when they played well, if they had a bad game, suddenly the math, it's just still a lot of points to make up. And I think that if you do not have that psychological barrier next year, if you come out of the gates with a nice start, I think they're going to be able to capitalize upon that over the entirety of the year, as opposed to constantly just be facing a daunting challenge of needing to kind of crawl out or dig your way out of a hole. As stupid as that sounds, that's what they were tasked with, and it was a lot. So these are things I don't expect them to go winless in their first 7 games this year or next year. You combine that with rectifying some of the issues with the defense, be that through personnel or tactics, because I do think there are talented defenders here. I think the Earthquakes will be in a much better position.
Yeah. And, there will be a lot less questions going into next season. And that's going to be the key here, guys, is that, they're going to have the ability to hit the ground running once the season starts, because there are a lot of guys who have solidified their positions with this team. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is going to come down to what they're going to look like in terms of their defensive approach and how they're going to prevent what happened this season and, what's going to happen next season as they look to get a lot more points and to make the playoffs for next year. So as we close out the show, I want to invite everybody to visit quakesepicenter.com, where you can find our articles by all of our brilliant writers. You can find information about the social media, the different social media that we're on right now, which includes Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at Quakes Epicenter and those places. You can also subscribe to our show both here on YouTube, or you could find us on podcast listening platforms, which include Apple Podcasts and all the other ones that you can search for out there as well, whatever you prefer. So go check out our website. We have the salary spreadsheet on there done by Colin Etnier. It's a really useful tool to kind of figure out where the gaps are in the budget and what
Colin season is about to start, Phil.
One more time?
We know it is Colin season. It's about to start.
That's right. It is
Colin
certainly
Etnier season. It's ramping up right now.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out. And if you look on the bottom of the screen there, you can see Jamon has put up the Patreon for Quakes Epicenter for just $2 a month. You can join our Patreon. You can become a patron and get early access to our content. This includes videos. This includes the articles that are released to our patrons before being released to the general public. If you go up to the $5 tier, you can join our Quakes Epicenter Slack, which is a really great place to chat with some of the more hardcore Quakes fans who are really invested in the team and love to talk Quakes throughout the week, not just on the weekends when the Quakes are actually playing. So make sure you go check that out. That's quakesepicenter.com/Patreon. And last thing, I want to shout out the scarves. They are wonderful. I have one here with me right now.
Oh, I forgot my scarf. I should have brought a scarf today.
Did you bring your scarf, Jamon?
I did not bring my scarf to the game.
Okay. Well, if you go to shop.quakesepicenter.com, you'll see we have stickers and we have the Aftershock scarves. Aftershock on one side with the Aftershock logo, and you have San Jose on the other, so you can still support your beloved San Jose Earthquakes. And you've got the Quakes Epicenter logo.
Ted's got one too, very prominently displayed in the bedroom, I'm sure.
his wife really loves it.
As I walk in the room, I slap it on the way in, so I know it's going to be a good day.
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you for that, Ted. Really appreciate it. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to thank Ted Ramey for joining us here. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for being on the show. And for Jamon, I'm Phil Leyva. Thanks for everything this season. Thanks to everybody who has joined us throughout. We'll see you again soon. We're going to have a postseason show coming up. We'll let you know when that goes out. Thanks for tuning in and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.